All right, I'm here with Faysal Abi. This is my good friend, former first responder, yogi, body alignment and optimization coach, specialist. I mean, you do it all, man. Super excited. By the way, you're one of the very few that I've had on the podcast for round two, and so this is really special. And when we go, when do it, we do it big because we do it in person. So great to have you back on the show, man.
Thanks, man. I'm really excited to be here. The first time was so fun, and it feels like a different lifetime ago.
3 years ago. I was 3 years ago.
Only 3 years ago?
Yeah, man.
Wow.
So I want to ask you. I want to get right into it because
Yeah.
I want the viewers to get to know you right away.
Sure.
3 years ago, we were talking. The first episode was during the pandemic, so a lot has changed. Back then, you were in a brick and mortar studio doing yoga and some of your body alignment and optimization that you were doing. But now it's even expanded even greater. You're doing a lot of virtual stuff and you're doing a lot of just remote work and launching group coaching programs, all this exciting stuff. So catch us up. What's new and exciting? And man, what have you learned and added since we last spoke? That's what I want to know, number one.
Okay, so I was heavily focused into the yoga field and area of things. And a lot of yogis may get mad at me for saying this, but yoga alone is not the answer. There's no just one thing is the answer to everything. So since then, I studied posture work. I studied body work, so got licensed in massage therapy, corrective exercise. So all these different ways of addressing problems in the body or chronic pain in the body. So the yoga, I've kind of slightly shifted and created my own method, which is a lot more mobility, flexibility, range of motion based kind of training. So I have 3 classes of those 3 times a week. And those are public classes. You can show up, kind of like you did once.
Yeah.
Or you could zoom in. And then the one-on-one work with clients, which is also in person or via Zoom. So all I've added really is different lenses of looking at potential issues, pain in the body. It's kind of, the results have been pretty fascinating.
Yeah, well, last time I saw you, you were adding a GOSCU training.
Yeah.
You could do a lot of that remotely. And so the way I look at you, every time I see you, you're so intuitive. You look at me and in split seconds, you're like, let me guess, your right hip hurts, your right ankle. You just know it. And then you go to town on me with just quickly, just before we got on camera, you were retuning my elevator and all these things, and you knew right where to go. You're so intuitive. Like, has that always been something that you've just had, or you've grown and developed, or was that from yoga? I know a lot of yogis have this intuition.
So we got to be careful talking about intuition because people like you and me are comfortable with that kind of terminology. But a person who's medically trained, they shut down that part of themselves, right? So if it's not scientific, if it's not in a book, it just doesn't align in there. So I feel like I'm becoming more and more intuitive the more I become myself. So I feel like it's something I've always had and maybe shut down, or I've known things before even having the formal training. And now I can validate the things I already know through the training I have. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
or
makes
do I need
makes
to
total
elaborate
sense.
on that? So for example, I can look at someone, I'm like, I bet their low back hurts. Like right away within my gut. But then I start seeing them walk. I see where their shoulder is. I see how their knee is and where their feet are hitting the ground. And I'm like, that's why I thought their low back hurts. Because it actually does. And now based on these reasons. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now it's like I can sit down and have a conversation with a chiropractor, a PT, and a doctor about why this thing is the way it is. Or for the people that are super embodied, meditating, yogis, I'm like, yeah, my gut feeling is this. And they don't need an explanation necessarily. And if they do, I have one.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, you can communicate. There's those, whatever they say, right brain, left brain people. Everyone needs to be explained to differently, and wherever they're
Yes.
at on the plane and they are in their life.
I love that you said that. Yeah, and it's like you have to. This is what's so powerful about helping people transform pain in their body is you have to speak their language. So I have chiropractors, I have doctors, I have osteopaths that come into my practice, and they need a certain type of lingo. They need a certain type of explanation, right? And then someone who's a shaman is probably...
You have shamans that come and see you?
100%. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And if someone who's a shaman, I could say things that are more aligned with the energy of the body, and they can resonate with that. Right?
Yeah.
Because if I'm technical with a shaman, he's going to be like, okay, well, you kind of lost me there. But if I'm energetic with a doctor, they're going to be like, who the hell is this guy?
Let me ask you this. You've got chiropractors, osteopaths, all of these esteemed people
Dentists,
that know
MDs, yeah.
body work. Maybe some would even say, well, they have a degree. They know more than you. How are you getting these people better, and why are they coming to you? Because can't they just get chiropractic? Don't they know already how to heal themselves? Why are they coming to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my guess is when you help one person and there's results, let's just say my best friend is a doctor.
I'm your best friend, so
you're my best friend. Let's just say you're a doctor, and I know somebody that made my knee better, and I went to 8 doctors and I didn't get any help or relief. Now I tell my friend, hey, I know this dude. Now the doctors always say, well, what are his credentials? It's always interesting, right? And that's okay. But when you hear enough of positive feedback in your circle about somebody, you start thinking, well, maybe I should take a look at this person. And that's kind of what it is. I've never advertised a day in my life for anything. And the business has always been referral based. And it's a business. I know I call it a business, but honestly, my heart and soul is in the work I do, Joel. Like there's nothing, every time I'm with a client and I'm working, there's nowhere else I want to be. There's nowhere else I want to be. It's because this is like what my calling is. And because it takes so much energy to do that, I'm doing more and more group stuff now. But that's why. I think the proof is in the pudding, the results.
It's about results. That's it.
Yeah. Is a doctor really going to care at the end of the day? His shoulder and neck were bothering him. Is he going to care at the end of the day that you're not a surgeon? Right? I mean, he wants to know you have the certifications and the licenses and some sort of education to touch and to back up the things that you're talking about. But beyond the basics, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
Right? So here's a beautiful story. There's a guy and his wife who used to come to me, and he had TMJ. And I didn't know this. But apparently his wife has treated
Really
him.
quick, you didn't know this. So what did he come to you for? What did he tell you?
It was mostly for his shoulder and back, and he could see himself all twisted up. He had, it was significantly, why is the word not coming to me?
He had scoliosis.
Scoliosis. Thank you. Thank you.
When you did this.
Yeah, I'm like, the spine is twisted. So, till today, it's hard to recollect some words sometimes from that freaking brain injury. So I didn't know he had TMJ. And one day, I was like, so how are you feeling? We're going through the checklist of the things that have gotten better. And he goes, oh, I never told you this, but my TMJ is gone now. I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me about this? He's like, well, I didn't think, by the way, I get this all the time. He's like, I didn't think you could help with this, right? I hear this a lot, like, I had digestive issues, but I didn't tell you. What do you mean you didn't tell me? Why didn't you? They're like, well, because I didn't think you could do anything about it. Right? So what's interesting is his TMJ was gone. And I was trying to figure out why. So I was like, let's take a look. So we put up his pictures of the first session to number 8 or whatever it was. And his head was in a completely different position. And so his jaw issues went away. I love that. I would have preferred to know, right?
Yeah.
But I think as you start to align your body and look at the whole entire system, emotionally, physically, stress-wise, sleep-wise, things start to get corrected. You can't just pick. This is what drives me crazy about the current system we have, right? And I think if there's anyone that's going to understand this, it's probably going to be you. Can I swear in this podcast?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. The biggest frustration I have with the current system, please Look at the whole fucking body. Look at the whole fucking body. Stop looking at where the person is only complaining of issue, because it's all connected. It's a system. So if you were to ask me what makes me successful, I listen, not just to the person, but to their body. What does the body have to tell me? Because the body wants to get better. And it tells you how, if you're paying attention, right? No body doesn't want to find homeostasis. No pain doesn't want to be resolved. It's almost like it's like the universal agenda for us to get better, for us to heal, for us to transcend, evolve. And it goes anti-life for us not to. So if you're paying attention, you're gonna get guided towards that which is gonna make someone better. But here's the key. Someone has to want to get better.
Whoa.
Someone has to want to get better, because often there's like secondary gain from people, right?
Yeah.
Not getting better. Now all of a sudden they're getting love and attention from their husband, when before they were just not even there. Or all of a sudden now they were trying to get out of a job and it's been so toxic, and all of a sudden now they have a reason to not get better because they may be able to get out of this job, right? We do the same thing with disease. Sometimes we make ourselves sick to get out of a situation we don't want to be in, a relationship, a job, a life that we aren't living for us. And we go too soon. We leave this planet much sooner than we should, and we hit the reset button because we're not doing it right. And who am I to say someone's doing life wrong? That's not how I mean it. I mean doing it right in regards to their heart.
Living the highest version of yourself. That's what you're saying. When you're not in that frequency, you're not, it's a crime, really. It's like you could be so much more and you're not living that fullness, that vitality. And I know exactly what you mean. And I love what you said, where there is no faith, there is no cure. And so if the person doesn't even believe at that bottom level that they can even get better, they're not going to get better. You could do all the body work and everything you want and nothing will change, because subconsciously they don't even want to get better.
So I love that you said that. I love that you said that. I'll never forget this story. I got a phone call on a weekend like, hey, can you see my friend? And I don't work weekends. And they're like, they're in so much pain, fights. They've been in and out of the ER I don't know how many times in the last few weeks. I'm like, sure, as a favor for you, I'll take a look at your friend. All right, so they're coming up the driveway. They're limping. The leg is dragging on the floor. They're in so much pain. Tears coming down their eyes, just walking up the driveway. I felt so bad for this person. Just get them on the table right away, and I start going to work. 30 minutes later, true story, 30 minutes later, I said, okay, get up and see how you're feeling. They get up off the table. They walk around, perfectly normal. Face looks relaxed, no more tears. And then guess what this person says to me?
Thank you.
No, they said, it's the same. They said it's the same.
Actually, it's not. You're walking now. You weren't doing that.
And so my reply was, look, I'm not even going to charge you for the session, but I can't help you. I hope you go find the help that you need. And then they started arguing with me. Yes, you can. I think you can. And I'm like, well, with all due respect, if you did not have the awareness to see what you were like 30 minutes ago and what you are like now, I can't help you. It's just, I'm not the person for the job. I'm just not. It made me really sad, because not just because I had to work on a weekend and use vital energy in my hands, but I gave a piece of my heart to this person, and it didn't matter. And now I'm just more selective about who I give a piece of my heart to. And I don't mind doing it. I'll do it 1,000 times over, but I'm selective, and I give it to people who I know are going to take that energy and use it as fuel, not just take that energy and flush it down the toilet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not me. You see what I'm saying? I had a beautiful chiropractor train me. God, he was so amazing. He still is amazing. And he said, Faysal, you're a healer now. I'll never say I'm a healer, right? But he said, you're a healer now. And he goes, remember this, take no credit for people that get better and take no blame for people that don't.
That's so
because
good.
It's not you.
Yeah.
And it isn't. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like people just are just at the point in their life sometimes where they're ready to get better. And it could be a touch. And they're like, oh, best thing ever. It's gone. Thank you. Right? And then for others, it's like the whole world intervenes. And they're not ready. The whole universe is conspiring to help them. And they're just rejecting it.
Let me ask you this, though. On that note, you and we haven't always been so self-realized or self-actualized, whatever you want to call it. To even say that just sounds like I think I'm so high, and I'm not. But my point being
we're not.
is, we're not.
Okay.
We're not.
You
Yeah,
said we're not. Yeah.
I'm constantly trying to get better and get to the higher spaces. But what I wanted to ask you is, for this person that you're talking about, you're right. She was not ready, or he was not ready. I can't remember who they were. That person was not ready. Do you ever, though, think, and I mean, maybe that's where you want to focus your efforts at, but, that's why people like myself and you hire other coaches. We spend a lot of money to learn from the best, okay?
We do.
Because we want to keep learning. If this person were to pay you and she said, well, no, I think you can help me. And do you ever think like, well, if you'd come to me 8 sessions, I'm going to get you better. And guess what? I'm going to change your mindset because the way you're looking at the world from what you've been taught based on your beliefs, based on your ideas.
Yes.
They're down here and you could be up here. And as a coach, we help people. You and I are coaches.
It's a great
help
question.
people bring up to here. Do you think like, well, in 8 sessions, I know I could get this person to be up here. And that's where I want her to be her higher vital force. Or I don't know.
Question.
So how do you look at that?
That's a great question. I think there's a specific, so I always ask, do you want to get better? Right? And even if someone goes, yes, there's in the tone that they use, they're telling you the truth in whether they mean what they're saying or not. So do you want to get better? Yeah.
Because some people don't know it's possible.
Sure.
It's not that they don't want to get better.
Sure.
They're just like, I don't know. I've been to everybody.
Well, I think, so I agree with you. Some people definitely are at the place where they're ready to be molded and transformed and to look at themselves, right? And some people aren't.
And for you and that energy, I think you're saying, I didn't feel it from that person. Like I could have probably corrected her 8 times and given her the best and you knew in that one treatment, based on that one treatment, if I had done this 8 more times, it would have been like the definition of insanity.
Yeah, in that session, I felt like there was more happening emotionally.
Yeah.
Remember that analogy we used in the beginning where there can be sometimes a secondary gain from being in the state that you're in? I felt like something deeper was happening there, which is almost always why when there's something chronic happening, there's always an emotional component to it. Mm-hmm. And if you really, I'll never forget this quote. There's a beautiful quote by Rumi, the poet. And he says, the cure to your pain or disease or illness, depending on how it's translated, is in the pain, the disease, or the illness. It's in it. So what does that mean? What do we usually do when we feel anxious? How many of us actually say, I feel anxious right now. I'm going to sit with this. I'm going to sit with this anxiety until I soothe it, until I hold it, until I make it feel better. And how many of us are like, I'm anxious, more coffee. I'm anxious, up later. I'm anxious, do more. Like instead of turning towards the thing that we're feeling, we try to run away from it.
I'm anxious. Give me a pill.
I'm anxious. Give me a pill. Right? So I'm anxious. I need a minute. Just turning towards it, and now it like dissipates it. That's what you have to do with the body. So there's pain there. Let's feel it. Where does it radiate to? Is there anything stuck in there? How do you feel when you tune into it? Often, there's an emotional component. There was a really kind man that started coming to me, and he had really bad back pain. And we did all the technical stuff, and he wasn't getting better. And then he was laying on the table, and we're working on his back. And I just said, look, man, just entertain me. Entertain me. What's stuck here? What's stuck here? And he broke, I thought he was laughing, but it was crying. He started screaming, and I was like, whoa, what did I say? What's so funny? And he scared the shit out of me. I literally jumped up like I was scared. And he was crying. And he started telling this story about how all the kids he had left for college, and he has no identity now outside of that. And how all this, he felt like he didn't know how to express. This is in his body. And all I did is ask a question. And just as quick as he started crying, he stopped. He got up. He was like, whew, that was kind of wild. Walked out, and I never saw him again. Never saw him again. He wasn't ready to face his emotions. And that's okay, right? All I do is maybe, from an analogy perspective, open the door for you to show you something. And now you decide if you want to look at it. You decide if you want to shut the door. You decide if you want to walk away. You decide if it's all a bunch of hocus pocus and you don't want to look at it. But when we did everything technical, right? We did the posture work. We did the realigning his body. We did repositioning things. We did exercises that he was doing daily. And things weren't changing. Why? Why weren't things changing? Because the body was calling for something else to be addressed.
So good.
It's wild, right?
It's totally wild. And I've seen a lot of, there's so many good books. The Emotion Code, Dr. Bradley Nelson talks about The Body Keeps the Score. There's so many things where we talk about these emotions getting trapped in people. You just reminded me, there's a guy I was working with recently, and he had weight loss issues and some of these other issues and actual health and inflammation issues. And you know what? Before we even got started, like you said, before we even got started detoxing and doing all the cool stuff that I like to do, unbeknownst to me, he kind of gave me a little bit of history, but I kept checking in. I'm like, hey, have you done the detox yet? He's like, no, it'll be next week. It'll be next week. Okay. Weeks go by. Check in on him again. Have you done the detox? No. However, I want to tell you something. It's like 3 weeks have gone by. I'm like, when are you going to do the detox? This is kind of important, right? He says, Joel, I stopped drinking alcohol. Like, I haven't stopped drinking alcohol for like 20-something years. But I got to tell you, I just reconnected with my daughter who I haven't spoken to in 4 years. Wow. Do you think I even care about him starting some stupid detox? Absolutely not. Like, he just reconnected with his daughter after 4 years not talking to her. And he quit alcohol for 2 weeks cold turkey. He's like, I had like 1 day of like, kind of the shakes or whatever, second day wasn't great, but now I'm great. I could have thrown everything at him. I didn't even know this. I could have thrown everything at him. I know he wouldn't have gotten better, or it wouldn't have stuck. So what you're saying, that means so much. Yeah. I want to ask you, because we were talking about emotions, and you said, yeah, like I'll release emotions, and because you said, when I look at people, I'm using various modalities, and one of them is emotional mastery, and I actually will release emotions from people in their pain. I'm like, what?
They release it. I kind of point it out. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Can you expand more on that? And we just kind of talked about it, but can you expand more on is there anything else that we missed that we haven't already talked about when you're talking about how, and I know you're humble in saying, I don't do it. I'm just a vessel for it. But talk about maybe if there's anything else. You said, I have this great story, and I'm like, no, I don't even want to know. Let's talk about it on the podcast. Just where emotions getting trapped like that, and you're able to clear that.
Yeah.
And they get better.
Yeah. So here's a beautiful story for you. Started working with this client a couple months in. His body was pretty out of whack, misaligned. So remember, the first thing I do when I look at a body is try to bring it back to alignment, right? So the business is called Body Alignment and Optimization for a reason, because the first thing I focus on is aligning your body. It's the first thing, right? Before we load it, before I train you strength training, before I teach you your handstands, before I teach you advanced yoga poses, before you lift heavier, run faster, we want your body to be symmetrical. Person came in, had really bad low back and neck pain. Squash
Standard procedure.
Standard.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
A few months later, completely better. Comes in one day and he's like, Faisal, my back, it just hurts so much. I'm like, well, let's take some pictures. Took some pictures. Nothing really looked off. Saw him walk. Nothing really looked off. And I'm like, okay, man, do you mind if I ask you what's happening with your personal life? And he goes, well, I'm like, any kind of stress recently that's like unusual stress, like what's could be happening? Turns out his wife potentially found a lump in her chest, and they were biopsying it and figuring out what it was. They were really scared about what it was based on the mass. And so the poor guy was thinking, worst case scenario, he's going to lose his wife. That's why his back was hurting.
As soon as he connected with those feelings and the pain that you're saying, go in like Rumi talks about, did it dissipate? Or
So to tell you, yeah, it dissipated right away wouldn't be true. But was there definitely like a connection in his mind? Because just because you know something, it doesn't mean you're releasing it and it's resolved. Does that make sense? So just for example, if I know I don't feel safe in the world, money's an issue for me, I'm constantly worried about paying bills, I don't feel supported, that emotional feeling is in the low back. Just because I know that, it doesn't mean all of a sudden now I feel safe. Now all of a sudden money's coming in. And do you see what I'm saying?
100%.
There's a connection, and I understand it. And I understand the more I feel insecure, the more my back hurts. But it doesn't mean I'm ready to resolve it. So there was a connection, and he understood that. And that helped with the first step of the pain. Did it completely turn it around right then and there? That would be a lie. No, it didn't. But could it have? 100%. And I've seen that happen. In the moment, the person learns the lesson. They counteract it with a positive emotion, and it just disappears. That can happen. That can happen. So the point of that story is to show that something traumatic happening, a death, loss of a job, potential fear of losing your partner, something happening to your kid, and you're unable to say, whoa, this scares me. I don't feel safe. Baby, I'm afraid I'm going to lose you, right? Or I'm afraid of losing my job, and acknowledging the fear and going into it and getting it out of your body. Because what happens is when we don't feel something, the body holds on to it. It's like, okay, I'm going to be here until you're ready to feel me. Mm-hmm. The problem is we usually don't turn towards it. We usually just suppress it, like we do with anxiety, like we just suppress, right? We run away. I don't feel that way. Especially us men. Women are better, I think, at feeling their emotions. Us men, it's like, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to. You know all about this now.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, now moving forward, if someone comes to see you, because you mentioned it a couple of times, like I start with alignment first. Talk about just your process, why it might be different from somebody else. Again, we look at, you can go to a chiropractor, you can go to acupuncturist, you can go to the masseuse. What makes you different? What are you doing differently? I mean,
sure.
Look at, we've got PTs, osteopaths, and chiropractors coming to see you. Clearly, you're doing something different. Shamans are coming to see you. So your process is obviously a lot different. How do you like to work? I think you do an 8-week course. Like what can people expect, and what does that look like?
So when someone says to me, should I go to a chiropractor? Should I go to an acupuncturist? My answer is yes, you should. And they go, well, what should I keep doing? I'm like, the thing that works, right?
Results.
It's like, do the thing that works. Now, I think what makes me different is I'm just looking at the body through several different lenses. Okay? So versus like a chiropractor is solely looking at putting your bones back where they belong. Right? An acupuncturist may be looking at your meridians. Like PT is looking at where the prescription details for him to go. Your left shoulder is influencing your right knee. Unless he's working on his own in his own clinic, generally he's stuck to that right knee. Maybe he goes up to the hip, maybe goes down to the ankle, maybe. And that's it. So people don't come to me because this is the next best thing. People come to me usually, sadly, because they've exhausted everything else, right? And now it's like, well, let me just give this a try. I mean, I heard good things, but I don't think it's necessarily going to work. which is the best place to be, I think. I don't think it's really going to work, but let's just give this dude a try because I read all his testimonials. My friend said good things about him, and let's see where it goes. So that's really what it is. I think I first look at the body where it's misaligned, and then we correct that. And once we correct that, we're working on what's stuck. So what I mean by that is when muscles stick to one another, all the exercise in the world, all the acupuncturing of these muscles in the world, all the adjustments in the world are not going to unstick these muscles. You need to manually do it. And it's not just stroking the body up and down with oil and you're like, oh, hope you feel better. It's actually kind of like we did with you earlier. It's very technical. It's understanding where a muscle starts, understanding where it finishes, and where it's stuck to other muscles in between. And not just muscles do this, but like organs can even do this. So someone could come who's had abdominal issues or stomach issues since they were teenagers, and that same process of like, where are things stuck and releasing it, and now their digestion is better. So it's just literally learning how to tune into the body and having it reveal what it needs to. I was working on someone's calf the other day, and they're like, I said, where do you feel this? I'm like, my jaw. My jaw. I'm working on their calf, and they feel it in their jaw. Don't tell me the body isn't connected. We know there's fascia that encompasses everything. Organs, muscles, the entire body, a sheath. For you to only look at the thing that's hurting is like so primitive. So primitive. You would think in the age that we're in, we could zoom out a little and say, how is this thing connected to everything else? But we don't. So, it's really, I think people are really good at doing just body work sometimes. People are really good at doing just the posture thing. People are really good at maybe tuning into the body and helping people release emotions. I try to bring everything in-house. And this is why I've studied so much, right? Corrective exercise, body work, like all these different things to address whatever it is the person needs in the best way possible.
Yeah. I love that. And it's really the holistic approach, and you're constantly adding, tweaking, and taking things away and adding new things. And that's what I love about you, because it's always what's working the most. If it's not working, then I'm not going to use it.
My goal between you and me is to be at the point where I just point to someone's body and they release everything themselves. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you
think you'll get there?
Yeah. I think when I'm 80, 90 years old, that's how I'm going to be practicing. I'm not going to be using these hands. I'm just going to say, what's stuck right here? You know? And then say, in order to keep this where we just placed it, these are the things I need you to do to hold this position. And then the exercises come into place. But yeah, I really think I'll be there sooner than later, maybe even before I'm 80 or 90, if I live that long, right? But it's letting people do the work, not me do the work to help them do the work. And now I'm really, truly just guiding.
That's so cool. I was just thinking, even if you go like back in biblical times, some people would even say like, that's what Jesus did, right? Like everyone's like, oh, but Jesus, God, he was all this. It's like, no, he was just actually a vessel to like make people realize that inside of them, they are that.
And somehow we stripped all of that he preached to people, right? Like he would say, all the things I could do, you can do in greater. He would say that.
Yes.
But he didn't really mean that. It's like, no. You can't be empowered without the church as an intermediary. Yeah. It's like, no, but I feel really connected to Jesus, but I don't really feel connected to the church. Well, no, that we have. And that's exactly what he did. Exactly right. I feel that that's what Jesus did. He was empowering people and teaching them how to connect to that divine part of themselves.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of responsibility. And as my teacher would say, some people need their hand held through life. To tell you you're divine and God is in you.
That's too much.
Well, no, it was only in Jesus, and I have to go through that intermediary. It is too much for some people.
Yeah.
It is too much for some people. But I feel in my heart that was his message.
I'm with you. Yeah. I'm in alignment with that. Speaking of alignment, okay, I want to ask you to talk about just the new things that you're doing. Like again, I said, 3 years ago we were talking, and you were doing
It has to be more than 3 years. It has to be more than 3 years. Almost 4. Okay.
Almost
all right.
4.
Okay.
And a lot's changed. The pandemic hit, everybody's gone virtual, including yourself. Talk about, and I know because I know some of the things that you do, but for those out there, they may not know because you're saying, oh, I look at their alignment. Talk about some of the things that you're able to do even virtually and get incredible results. And then I want to hear about some of the new courses and some of the things you're excited about and that you're creating so that even if people don't live here in California and don't have access to you, fear not, they can.
Yeah, so the online work is pretty technical. It's just the way it is in the sense where it's very mechanically based. So I'm looking at you walk, I'm looking at where your body is in space, and I'm saying, here's what we're gonna do to correct it. And I create a formula for your body to retrain your brain-body connection in holding the position we want it to hold and shift away from the old position. So everything that we do is connected almost like in a program in our brain, right? We have to rewire that program. We have to put in a new program of what we want. Does that make sense? Or does that kind of seem elusive?
It doesn't. The only thing I was thinking is you take a snapshot of Joel.
Yes.
And then, I don't know, 8 weeks, 4 weeks go by.
Correct.
Now we take another snapshot.
It's a weekly program, yeah.
Well, okay, it's a weekly program.
I see you every week.
Yeah.
I see you every week when we tweak things and we add more, we add less. Usually the program gets consistently harder over that period of time, right? So it's waking things up in the beginning that haven't been used. And then it's like now those things are a little awake and we could put a little bit more demand on the body in that position. And it slowly morphs itself into something like eventually loading the body, eventually, weights, eventually like putting it under stress to level up where we're trying to go.
Yeah.
Right? So personal trainer, you go see them, they're like, yeah, let's get you squatting, let's get you lifting, let's get you running. I don't do that shit. Because if your knees aren't where they're supposed to be, or your hips, or your feet, or your shoulders, and now I'm loading your body, that's fucking problems. Why? Because it's already compromised. You see what I'm saying? So until your body is aligned, we don't really level it up from a strength perspective.
No, that makes complete sense because I'll give you an example. One of my friends just created a beta program doing something similar to what you're doing. He does a lot of body work and stuff. And so I went through his beta program and, like my right knee will hurt if I run more than a mile. It just starts to hurt because like you said, my system, my chassis is off. So if you're like just throwing Joel into a weightlifting problem, but I'm like, just so you know, like my knee hurts. Well, my knee hurts because there's things out of order. It would make no sense to add load to a body that's already the chassis. The foundation is already a wreck.
Yeah. So I think Pete Egoscu said something along these lines of, look, a joint's supposed to last you 100 years. Like 100 years. And if instead of the knee going in its range of motion where it's supposed to go like this, now it's tweaked a little bit. This thing isn't going to last 100 years.
No.
It can't, right? So your priority should be making sure it's where it's supposed to be before you start demanding more of the body, right? And it's only natural. And I tell clients, like, over time, things are going to come up because we're exposing greater weaknesses in the body. But now you're also squatting 200 pounds when before you can squat 50. So things are going to come up. It's not bad. We want those things exposed. So what it looks like online is very specific catered menu to change what's happening in your body. And what I am developing now is I'm realizing there's a theme with people because of our lifestyle. Most people's shoulders are in an anterior position. They're rolled forward. I'm realizing most people have a theme with their hips and low back. Most people have a theme with their feet and knees. So what I'm creating now is a program. So, hey, you don't want to work with me. It's too pricey, whatever your reasoning is. Purchase this program for the shoulders. Purchase this program for the hips. Purchase this program for the feet.
Awesome.
You see what I'm saying? Ultimately, the whole body has to be looked at in a holistic sense. So you should technically be doing the entire program for every single part of the body, but it gives people a place to start in adjusting and correcting some of these these days normal dysfunctions that we have based on the sitting, the driving, the computer work, the TV watching.
Yeah. So that's really neat. And you're using also, can you just talk about like, you're able to like take a snapshot of somebody, because then how do they know and how do you know you're able to take a snapshot of their body that shows kind of on a grid, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, your head is like over here, but I thought I was straight. It's like, no,
Yeah.
here's like a straight line. We
Yeah.
can take a picture of you online remotely via Zoom and we can get a snapshot of you. And then through the body work and the things you're doing, now next week, every week, we can take another photo and see, is the training working? Can you kind of speak on that?
I have an infinite amount of before and afters of people. And then what I always do is once I take a picture, I throw the picture of them first session up on the screen. And they're always shocked. Like my head, I do that with my head. I do that with my shoulder. I do that with my hips. Like they're blown away. And even while doing exercises, I'll say something like, drop that shoulder. And they're like, it is dropped. So I record things and I'm like, this is what you were doing. They're like, oh my God. Because their proprioception, where their body is in time and space, isn't where it really is. Because they're so used to doing this all day. The shoulder shrug. Or flaring the hip out. Or pointing one foot one direction. Or leaning one way. Right? They've been doing this usually most of their life. You can actually sometimes go back to people's pictures when they were kids and they were doing that head tilt. And I heard a study actually that it starts in the womb. If a mom's pelvis is misaligned, that the fetus already starts leaning its head one direction or another. Wow. So can you imagine? We're correcting a pattern that was since the day this person existed. Before they even came into the world, they're already doing this head tilt thing. And that's why their fucking neck hurts and their shoulder hurts. And they're compressing the joints there, and the nerves aren't working properly down the rest of that side of the body. So now they're weakness on the right shoulder and left hip, or the other way around, left shoulder, right hip. And this is how the body starts to break down so much sooner than it needs to.
Yeah.
So much sooner than it needs to. So that's the online thing. The group classes are all flexibility and mobility based. So kind of keep you agile, keep you young, introduce new moving patterns constantly. Classes could be passive stretches, active stretches, dynamic stretches. You never know what you're going to get because I don't even know what we're going to do. But always isolating usually a different body part. Feet, knees, hips, shoulders and neck day, twists, it all depends. And that's a summary of everything that I'm working on right now. I'm excited about this online program though, because I think it's going to give a lot of people access to something that allows them to kind of do the work themselves. Because I think a lot of people get intimidated saying, hey, picking up the phone or emailing, hey, I have this problem, can you help me? Mm-hmm. It's like, this way, hopefully 80-90% of the problems are corrected. People could do it on their own. And if it doesn't work after that, then contact me for sessions.
Yeah, I love that. It's a little buffet style that you're creating. And then you also have the community and the group coaching, everything else that you're building, and that's gonna be really nice. I wanted to ask you, in everything that you've learned and you know and you understand, is there like one thing that you know to be true? And what comes to mind when I ask you that? Like, what do you know that is absolutely true? Yeah,
I love that you said, that's a freaking hard question to answer. What's true is what's inside everyone's individual heart. So if you tune in to your pain, to where you should go in your life, what decision you should make, you should be your greatest teacher, your greatest guide, not anyone else. Don't give your power to anyone else. And if the problem is, most of us are so disconnected from our heart, ourself, our intuition, that we have no guidance. But we should be the greatest sense of guidance in our life, right? You should develop that relationship within yourself, right? That's the greatest truth.
I love that. I think you're so right. And it's in many ways very simple, but actually very difficult and something that you actually have to
Cultivate.
really become. And you started this podcast off talking about awareness. And if you're not even aware, then you'll never even know or be able to cultivate that sense of truth, that sense of presence, that sense of, aha.
We're in a world, Joel, where science is trumping people's intuition. And that's very scary. So I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to repeat what I just said. Science is trumping our intuition and what our body is telling us about something. And that's a scary thing. Just because someone tells you something is safe, but it doesn't feel good in your body, or you feel sick after, or intuitively you know you shouldn't engage with it. Fuck the science for a moment and listen to your gut. Right? Like the perfect analogy I'd say for that is I hold the cell phone to my ear for 5 minutes and I have a headache. I don't need a study to tell me that I got a headache and my body doesn't like what I'm doing. Right? If I eat some junk food, I may break out. I may have some abdominal issues. I don't need a study to tell me the thing I ate isn't good for me. So stop doing that shit. Stop saying, oh, but it's safe. According to who? Your body should be the greatest guide to everything. Even working with someone. You look at someone, your body goes, this person can help us. Or your body's like, stay the fuck away from this person. Even a person you're dating, even a person you're just friends with. Listen to that. That's the highest part of you speaking. Listen to that. Science has its place in the world, and it's beautiful. Beautiful. Never should it trump your gut feeling. Never.
I love that. That is so powerful, and so good because it reminds me of this book I read a long time ago by Gavin DeBecken, and it was he does a lot of security, and I'm actually The Gift of Fear. It's called The Gift of Fear, and that's what he talks about. He talks about really any victim of any crime always knew they were going to be a victim of a crime because when he asked them, did you know this was going to happen? They're like, oh, no, it just came out of nowhere. But then when he kept asking questions, they'd always say, well, actually, I heard a rustling in the bush. Actually, there was a guy following me for 5 blocks. I just didn't want to turn around. They always knew because the body knew it. Actually, the instincts were there. And so it's different than it's the same, but different context. And so I love that.
It's like what you just said, it knew. And then what did we do? We shut it down.
We shut it down.
And then it knew again, and then we shut it down again. And then it knew again, and then we shut it down again. And at some point, it can't be shut down because it's happening. That thing that you shut down so many times is now in front of you.
Yeah.
What does this mean, Joel? It means take responsibility for yourself, your life, your emotions, because that is the relationship you have with yourself is the most important one. It all starts in my heart. I really believe this. It all starts in your body. If you can't tune into how you feel, right? Don't expect to get to the next level in life. If you're just disconnected and you're all in your head or in your penis or you're down there, whatever it is, but there's nothing in between. There's no heart there. You're on a program. That's what makes us human. We're more than a program. A mosquito is on a program. A bee is on a program. You're not a mosquito. You're not a bee. Think independently. Feel. Be fucking human. You aren't, the less feeling you do, the less human you are. I mean, my teacher would say, your greatest job is to become more human. And he said half the people on this planet aren't human.
I was just thinking, I think we should wrap it up and end it on that. I was just thinking, there's several books I've read about just higher consciousness and metaphysics talking about the different vibrational planes. And even what you're saying, a rock actually has an energy and is on a vibrational plane. A rock actually has energy, believe it or not. But it's the lowest form in terms of vibrational planes. And then there's the animal, and then there's the human, and then there's like the cosmos and everything like that. And so it's funny that what you're saying, so many of us, I was even thinking, yes, so many of us are actually, we're acting the consciousness of a rock, maybe. Some of us, or even that of an animal. you're a human. Like, act like it, or even act beyond. You can even be beyond that if you even believe that. So I love what you said.
Greatest thing in life is to become more yourself and to shed everything that isn't. Right? To become more yourself. Like,
Yeah.
shed the shit that was the program that your parents pushed on you, that the schools pushed on you, right? And start to find what your purpose is, why you're here.
Yeah.
And that comes by tuning into yourself. Everything outside of you is a reflection of what's happening inward. And that's a hard pill to swallow, because then you're telling people, well, you're empowered and this is happening because this is what you feel should happen. It's a scary fucking thing. So I know you said you want to wrap up, but
No, I mean, we could just keep talking on higher level stuff, but to your point, that is scary. And I like the way you brought it up, because that's like, I even think about that. Oh, God, this happened to me. No, it didn't. This traffic happened to me. This is so stupid. None of it happened to you. It happened for you.
I
Life
love
is
that.
just happening. You have to, are you allowing it to happen? You're living within it? How are you living, though? Is everything just happening to you? So you're the victim? No, it's just happening. It just is. But so many of us are looking to attack it. And that's where the resistance comes
ego,
from. So,
the ego.
Yeah.
Right?
We could do a whole
Instead of-
podcast on just ego. So that's why.
Yeah.
Man, any last final thoughts? Just let people know where they can connect with you, find out, learn more about you, and just all the cool things that you're up to. If you go to your Instagram, you're doing handstands in the airport, on escalators and elevators and stuff like that I show my kids. And anyways, let them know where they can connect with you.
Instagram is a great page. Just Faysal, Faysal _Abi, ABI. My website, FaysalAbi.com, or bodyalignmentandoptimization.com. That's kind of like the biggest ways. And the online classes are a great way to kind of connect and get your stretch on every week. Remember, if you're not lengthening the body, it is shrinking over time. That's just the way it is. It is shrinking over time. So you don't want to shrink, lengthen it. It's pretty simple. So I think a regimen of stretching is so important. And I love personally being accountable. So for example, every Tuesday night, Thursday, and Saturday, I'm doing these exercises. I'm stretching. And I think this class is very accessible to everybody. You sign up for that at Peace Bank Yoga Studio in Redwood City. It's also a link on my website. And then wait till the program comes out. I'm excited about that. And then a book, hopefully following in your footsteps of all the different ways healing happens in the body.
Ooh.
All the different ways healing happens. And it's not just through one lens. We're a whole system, right? So it's nice to address all of it.
I love that, dude. I'm so excited for you, and I'm so excited just for the people lives who you're going to touch. And now that you can actually even touch more lives remotely and not just in person, it's
I really
a gift to the
appreciate
world,
you
dude.
being
So
here
thank you.
and doing this with me. So good to see you.
Yeah. Namaste.
Namaste, baby.